Welcome back, everyone. Well, just to recap once again where we are at so far, we have created some surface types here in our project settings under Engine, Physics. Here are our labeled different surface types. So we've done that. Then what we did is we assigned a surface type to each of the physical materials that we created, and we can find our created physical materials at this pathway. And here is my physical material for gravel, and that's where we assigned a surface type that we called gravel. And then we assigned a physical material to each of our landscape layer info objects here in our landscape paint mode. So here I've got my gravel layer info object, and with that opened up, you can see how I have assigned a physical material to that. Now, we're doing line traces every footfall to determine what surface type our player is on. With that done, we can now make modifications to the way our character moves, depending on what surface type they're on, because we know what surface type they are now on. So the goal in this one is to modify how our player moves atop each surface type. So to do this, we're going to need to come into our third person character blueprint, and you can find this guy by coming under your third person BP folder. Double click on blueprints. There is your third person character. Double click on him to open him up, and leave this tab open because we're going to reference back in here in just a little bit. But for now, you want to come under mesh. We're going to want to come under our anim class as third person anim BP. Click on that little magnifying glass icon to browse to where your third person anim BP is in the content browser. And then you can double click on this to open it up. And we're going to be doing some more scripting here in our blueprint tab. This is the third person anim BP event graph. We've got our right foot and left foot scripts in here. We're going to be adding a little bit more down in this region, and then when we're done with that, we're actually going to add a call to a custom event at the end of our right foot and left foot scripts here. All right, first things first, we're going to right click in some empty space and we're going to add a custom event. Just type in custom and you can find the option for add custom event. And we get to name this right away. I'm just going to zoom up on it quickly, and I will just call this adjust movement because we're going to be adjusting how our player moves a little bit. Okay, and with this added, the next thing I'm going to add is a reference to our current surface. You remember back up in our left foot and right foot scripts, we had it so that when we were doing our line trace, we were getting the surface type and then we were saving that to a variable. And I mentioned that we were going to need to do that for a future video. This is that future video. So now that we are storing our current surface type, we're going to drag that into our graph here. We're going to get that. And off of this, we're going to drag out a wire and type in switch. And that's the one we're going to be looking for, is switch on physical surface. So depending on what our current surface type is here, we're going to fire out of these different pins. And I can click this little drop down arrow right here to reveal all of our different execution out pins based on our stored surface type here. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to bring in a print string node because I want to be able to print out to the screen what surface type that we are actually on. So if I drag out of adjust movement, we can type in print string. And we're going to adjust movement, print string, make sure our execution out wire is into our switch node. And then out of our current surface here, I'm just going to left click, drag a wire out of there and plug it into our string. It's going to bring in a conversion node to convert that enum to a string, like so. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we want to affect some of our player characters' movements. So the way we can do this is by right-clicking, typing in get player character. Then we're going to drag off of our player character and type in character movements. And at the very bottom of this search bar here, you can find get character movement rather. Now, how did I know that this was even a thing? Well, if we were to jump into our third-person character blueprint, right here, we can see that we've got a character movement component. That is how I knew I could find a reference to this component here in our third-person anim BP. Likewise, you could access any of these other components through that same method. If you wanted to talk to your mesh, for example, you could drag a wire out of your get player character and type in get mesh. And just to show you this quickly, get mesh. And at the very bottom of the list, you could get a reference to your mesh. Okay, now why do I want to get my character movement component here? Well, if I jump back to my third person character, with my character movement component selected, over in the details panel are many properties about the way my character moves that I can affect. There are some such as jump Z velocity that determine how high my character can jump, as well as ones like max walk speed. This determines how fast my character moves in the level. So I want to adjust some of these different properties here depending on what surface type my character is on. So here back in my third person anim BP, now that we've got the player character and we've got the character movement component, we can drag a wire out of this and find those various properties. So if I type in max walk speed, you can see that I can drill down into that movement component and get or set the character's max walk speed. In this case, I want to set the character's max walk speed. I'm going to affect how fast my character can move when on different surface types. So I'm going to be bringing out a few of these different properties here. We're going to affect the max walk speed. I'm going to drag out of my character movement again and type in jump Z velocity. I want to set jump Z velocity. And I'm just going to make a row of these across the top here like this. I'm going to drag out of the character movement again because these are all context sensitive properties. The reason that these are context sensitive is because they live within this character movement component. If I was to simply right click in some empty space here and search for these, I would not find them. They're context sensitive. So drag a wire out of character movement again. This time, let's type in ground friction. I want to set the ground friction. That is how sticky or slippery the surface of the ground may be. Let's drag out of character movement again. This time, we're going to do a search for braking. It is called braking deceleration walking. I want to set braking deceleration walking. And then last but not least, I'm going to drag out of my character movement component and type in max acceleration. We're going to set max acceleration. All right, you want to make a row of these. Whoops, like so. You can bring these all a little bit closer together if you want to. And I'm going to plug in some values here in just a little bit, but we're going to affect 3 different surface types here, our mud, our gravel, and our snow. So what I'm going to do is with all of these 5 nodes highlighted, which they currently are, you could go like that, left click and drag out a marquee selection to highlight them all. We'll do Control C to copy, and I'm going to Control V and paste once and twice. Now the kicker here is you see the target for all of these nodes needs to be hooked up to character movement. So I'm going to do that here quickly off camera. I don't want to bore you with that. And also I need to make sure that I've got my mud hooked into this first set, my gravel plugged into this second set, and my snow plugged into this third set. So I'm going to pause the video here, hook up my character movement to all these different targets, and I will rejoin you in a bit. Okay, and we are back here. As you can see, I've got my character movement component hooked up to all of these different setter nodes, and I also made it so that I plugged in some values into each of these setter nodes. So let's just recap and make sure that we're all on the same page with the values being set. So if I scroll over to the right here, you can see all these setters on the screen. So for mud, I've got the max walk speed at 200, jump Z velocity at 0, ground friction at 8, braking, deceleration, walking, and max acceleration at this 2048 value. I believe that is the default value. Gravel, max walk speed at 600, jump Z also at 600, ground friction at 8, that's the default value here, and also the braking, deceleration, walking is at 2048, and the max acceleration is at 500. Then lastly, for our snow settings, when we're on snow, we want our max walk speed to be 600, jump Z at 600, ground friction at 0, we want it to be very slippery, and our braking deceleration at 0 and max acceleration at 500. Now, why these particular settings? Well, my goal is to make it so that when we're on mud, we're going to hamper our character's speed and jumping ability. Gravel, these settings are meant to be just normal, navigating per normal, and snow, we want to slip slide around. So through some trial and error, these are some settings that I found were pretty good. Now, what I've done here is I created a custom event to lead off this bit of script. Now I need to add a call for this custom event. So this is called adjust movement. So all I need to do is at the ends of our left foot and right foot scripts, I'll start off with our right foot script, come way to the end. So after we spawn the decal, we're going to call for the adjust movement custom events to fire off. So there it is, adjust movement. That's going to make a call to start our custom event. And then down here is our left foot, adjust movement. There it is. So that's going to make a wireless call, if you will, adjust movement to this custom event. Let me just left click and put a comment box around this. Left click and drag, tap the C key, and we'll call this adjust player movement. And as we should do as good designers, we should compile to make sure our scripts are good to go. And they are, so we'll save that right away. Now, to test this out again, there is that bug that I showed you a few videos back where some of the line tracing and detecting of the surface types on a landscape is broken at the moment, but we can test this out on our map, again applying a physical material to some cube shape out here. So if you want to test this out, I recommend that you jump into your modes panel here, place a basic cube out in your level, and currently, whoops, I went up instead of forward. With this cube in the details panel, I have set our physical material gravel on top of this. So when we navigate atop gravel, our character's movement should be as normal. Let's go ahead and test this out quickly. I'm changing direction. Okay, nothing in particular interesting happening. Okay, jumping per regular. Okay, so now you can see it's kicking out in the upper left that I'm on a gravel surface type. Okay, jumping. Everything seems fairly normal. Okay. Next, let me select my cube here, and I'm going to change my physical material. Let's try mud. There is my physical material mud. Let me just jump back in and play. So, as you can see, I can jump per normal. But when I am now on mud, my character moves much more slowly. And if I try to jump, I can just kind of hop. I can't really jump. So that is how we can affect our character's movement if the surface type we detect is mud. Next, let's go ahead and select our cube here. I'm going to change the physical material over to snow now. And if I go ahead and play, now I am atop snow. And if I try to change direction, you can see how he's just kind of sliding around before he gains traction and is able to accelerate in another direction. Pretty cool, guys. So that is how we can go about making it so that different surface types affect how our character moves. All it took was a little bit more script, and here's that full script that we added inside of our third-person NMBP event graph. Well, guys, that is going to do it all for this video. We will see you in the next one.